Thank you all for being here. We appreciate. How many of our members are in the house? We have a lot, and we have a couple board members. Thank you very much. Patty is still out front doing some housekeeping. We want to thank Patty Gross and David are our sponsors for tonight. Thank you very much. Patty and David are both very active in the community between the Coast Guard Auxiliary, Force Blue, CRF, Women Diving Hall of Fame, History of Diving Museum Board. So she thought she was going to retire and relax. But that happens a lot. Dr. Sally is also, we were lucky that some of the board from Mariners Hospital were able to come in and help celebrate her birthday with us. So that was a nice addition as well. And we thank Dive Newswire, who is also partners with Ocean First and put out our press release, as well as others for the History of Diving Museum. Right now we have Salvaging the Deep featured exhibit, and will be on display until December 31st. And then we will be having Dive into Art, Fantastic Fish of Florida after that. Our Blue Star program is still going on through the Monday of Labor Day, which means active duty is free every day, but up to 5 family members are also free. So we encourage our military families in the Coast Guard and the Navy who are traveling through the Keys to come in and take advantage of that to see the exhibits. And then on Sunday, September 1st, we're going to actually do a guided tour. Normally the tickets are just admission and it's a self-guided tour, but on Sunday, September 1st, we're going to have the at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock a guided tour. So for some of our members that have been here before, it's just kind of an added bonus, because then we actually have found in the past that they come back with people that are in town, and now they've kind of been coached to be a docent, and now they're the ones with the guided tour because they have all that background information about the exhibit. So if you're in town, try to take advantage of those. Next month, on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, which will be September 18th, will be our next Immerse Yourself. But all of that said and done, tonight we have from Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Mikki McComb-Kobza. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
She's been studying sharks for over 20 years and recently in the Women Diving Hall of Fame. Very proud of her. She's done some work locally as well as internationally on sharks. So tonight, I know my question is, how do you get to be a shark researcher and live in Boulder, Colorado? And she will, I'm sure, answer that during our presentation. So if without any further ado.
All right, thank you. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to be here tonight. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. I love the Florida Keys. I consider the Keys to be my home away from home, and it's a place that's very special to me. So I'm really excited to be here tonight and to talk a little bit about my story and my love of sharks. And so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got interested in sharks in the first place, talk a little bit about sharks' history, their evolution. They have a fascinating story that I'll share with you tonight. We'll talk a little bit about some of the weird and the ugly and the most beautiful of sharks that are out in the ocean today. And then I'll talk a little bit about research and why I feel research is such a critical part of their story and a very important part. But I also will talk about education. And so the research that I do has a lot of application in education. And I feel it's really important to bring people along and into the story about sharks because they are fascinating. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And thank you for everybody who is at home and zooming in. I do want to take a minute and thank Patty. So Patty lives here, as you know, and Patty and I have a great connection. We met at DEMA many moons ago, and I met Patty because she was obsessed with coral. And when I say obsessed, that's putting it mildly. So Patty nominated me for the Women Divers Hall of Fame, and we just had that I just had that opportunity to be inducted this year. So thank you, Patty. So I run an ocean conservation nonprofit from Colorado. Yeah, it's a little odd. And so I'm going to get to the heart of why I do that. But it started with this. It started with a love of sharks. And the love that I have of sharks started in a very strange, but not totally unusual way. I'll start out by where I grew up. I grew up in Colorado. That's where my home is, in the Rocky Mountains. And my childhood was pretty normal. I spent a lot of time outside fishing with my parents, my brother, loved the water. Everything was great. And then I was 7, and it was the summer of 1975, and everything changed. So I went to the movie with my brother and walked out of there forever changed. I was terrified of sharks, absolutely mortified. I thought sharks were under my bed. I thought they were under the kitchen table, so I sat with my legs up. I tried out for the swim team and I made it because I was swimming from the invisible sharks to the drain. It was bad. I had a really, really big shark problem. So this is me as a little kid. That's my brother. We were all, I mean, it was Jaws mania. It was, you know, everywhere. Sharks were everywhere. And so I didn't really know how to overcome this real fear. I was truly feared. I was afraid of them. And the only way I knew to overcome my fear was to read about sharks. My parents, luckily, had old style school books, encyclopedias, animal encyclopedias, and I read about sharks. I devoured it. I loved it. And I learned their amazing story. And it didn't really match the story of Jaws. And it really sparked for me a lifetime fascination with these animals. And so I didn't go straight into becoming a shark biologist. I went into the business world because I didn't really know how to get there. I didn't know my way. And so I became a person who worked for an unemployment insurance claim office. It was not very great, but I was really good at it and I did great. But I had all of these shark pictures and posters all over my cubicle, and people would ask me, why? What is going on here? You're not normal. And I thought, yeah, fair. I couldn't kick it. So no matter what was happening, I couldn't kick it. I loved sharks. And I had an opportunity when I got a little bit older to have a second chance. And my second chance brought me here to the Florida Keys. I sat at the end of a dock and I thought to myself, what do you want to do with your life? What do you really want to do with your life? I was 27 years old. And I thought to myself, I want to be in the Florida Keys and I want to be a dive instructor. I want to swim with sharks every day. That's what I want to do. And that's what I did. So I came down here and I became an instructor. And I have to say it was one of the best times of my life. I got to be on the water every single day. It was my office and I swam with sharks all the time. And it was transformational for me. It brought me to sharks, and it allowed me to understand them more, to understand their behaviors, what they do, who they are, to understand their personalities, and it was an incredible time for me. I also became a treasure diver. There really are pirates in the Caribbean. I can tell you, they almost got me. It really is incredible to think, and you know that's why this is such an amazing museum. There's so much history here, and when you know your history, you know your treasure. Incredible. And then for me in the Keys, I had a really chance encounter that changed my life forever, as many of us do and have. And that was here in the Florida Keys. I went to a bar, imagine that. And someone said to me, hey, you have a job diving? And I said, sure do. Turned out I was the production assistant helper for National Geographic. And it was to work with somebody that I didn't know, and it turned out it was Sylvia Earle. And so I spent a week with her underwater in Aquarius habitat, learning all about her life, spending time with her, hearing her inspiring stories, and playing underwater football with her, which was incredible. And at the end of that week with her, I told her what I wanted to do with my life, and I wanted to help sharks. And she said, Mikki, who's stopping you? What? Go. What are you doing? And so I thought, okay, what does that mean? Maybe I need to go back to school. That's what I thought I needed to do. So the Florida Keys was in my blood. And I thought, okay, I've got to go. I've got to go. So I went back to school in Miami at FIU, and that almost killed me. Yes, Chemistry. Oh my goodness. So chemistry was very hard, but I made it through and ended up getting my bachelor's, my master's, PhD, and a postdoc here in Florida. Spent a long time in school, but it was, again, the time of my life because I got to travel all over the world asking questions about sharks and spending time with researchers and other like-minded, passionate people who love to ask questions about these animals and learn more. And so I have had, again, great opportunities to travel to places to work on freshwater stingrays, to work on snappy lemon sharks with icons like Dr. Sonny Gruber. I went to Australia to study crazy hammerhead sharks. This is the winghead shark, which I'll talk about. And then all scientists publish, and that's a big part of what science is. And doing outreach on Discovery Channel. My lab was just on Discovery Channel Shark Week a couple of weeks ago. So we try to really reach big audiences with the message. And this is the message. The message is that sharks are really long-lived animals. And when we think about sharks, we have to think about deep time. And that's a really hard one to understand. But when we think about our universe, our universe is thought to be almost 14 billion years old, and our planet Earth, 4.6 billion years old. And this is a water planet. And because we have water on our planet, we have life. And life got really big and interesting around 440 million years ago when we saw the rise of the first jawed vertebrates. And that includes the sharks. And we know that we had weird sharks like this on our planet because of the rocks. Fossils tell us what life was like in the past. And these are some of the weird animals that gave rise to the species that we see in the ocean today. That includes Heliocoprion, which has basically a buzzsaw in its jaw, and then Stethiocanthus, which looks like an ironing board on its back and with bristles. And we think that the males were the ones that had that, and it maybe had to do with mating. So interesting, but again, we don't know. We can only hypothesize based on the fossils. And again, this is the time. We think of, ancient animals as dinosaurs. Sharks have been here before trees. They were here way before the dinosaurs, around 200 million years ago. That's when we saw the rise of the dinosaurs. Sharks were already here. And what happened to the dinosaurs? Of course, we know an asteroid came, took out the dinosaurs, but sharks survived. So the story of the shark is a story of survival. And they are closely related to other animals called skates and rays. So collectively, they're called the elasmobranchs. And they have skeletons on the inside, just like you and I do, but their skeletons are made of cartilage. And so they are often called the cartilaginous fishes. So the stuff in your ears and at the end of your nose, that's how they become so flexible. They are the cartilaginous fishes. And because they have been on the planet so long, they have radiated into nearly every aquatic habitat on the planet. So from the brightly lit coral reefs to the muddy waters of the Amazon, my loves, the freshwater stingrays, to sharks like this that live under ice in the polar regions. This is the Greenland shark. New research tells us this shark could live upwards of 400 years. Incredible. Imagine. And then this is the frilled shark. So imagine living a life in the deep benthos where no sunlight penetrates. Imagine the adaptations in this animal to allow it to survive and thrive and survive down there in the deep. So when we study sharks, it's important to understand that there are over 500 living species, all which have their own adaptations, their own spin on reproductive modes, the way that they interact with their environment. And when I first started studying sharks, there were 474. Now there's well over 500, and we keep discovering more, even big ones, which is so surprising. Talking about big ones, this is the biggest shark in the ocean. This is the whale shark. So whale shark adults can get to be over 50 feet long. Whale sharks are filter feeders, so they spend a lot of time on the surface feeding on plankton And they're completely harmless. So this was me in La Paz with my family, dragging my son, kicking and screaming towards this shark. But again, completely harmless. And you can see down the mouth, the filtration apparatus that allows this animal, you know, the biggest animal is fueled by plants, you know, little tiny plants and animals. Absolutely incredible. And then to go from the biggest to the smallest, this is the dwarf lantern shark. It can fit into the palm of your hand, and that's as big as it gets. And some of these, like the velvet belly lantern shark, glow in the dark. Yes, and it's absolutely incredible. So there's a spine that glows, and the underbelly of this shark glows. And it is thought that this is a strategy to help them camouflage against predators. So as you look at the downwelling light here, you'll see that the belly really blends in, and that allows this animal to survive, to live another day. And then we go to probably the fastest shark. This is the cheetah of the sea. The mako shark has some really special adaptations. But makos they've been clocked up to 60 miles an hour. So driving on the highway, you could look over and you could see a mako swimming right next to you. Imagine all of the things that happen. They have special adaptations in their eyes. They superheat their eyes. Why do they do that? Because warm eyes allow them to process the visual scene faster and better. When you get cold, you know how you kind of shut down? So these animals have adaptations to allow them to heat not only their eyes, but some of the sharks can heat up their bodies above the ambient temperature, which is a huge advantage. And that's why we see these animals swimming so quickly. So this is the big eye thresher. This is absolutely a beautiful shark. Action isn't in the eye, it's in the tail. So they have what's called a heterocersal tail. It means that one lobe of the tail is larger than the other. And they use this as a weapon to stun schools of fish. These are the Indiana Jones of the shark world, for sure. And they spin around and quickly take in the stunned fish. Incredible. You know, it's absolutely incredible. And these are ones that will jump out of the sea. So you'll see them and you know you're looking at a thresher because of the tail.
Where do they live?
They live all over. A lot of them are in the Pacific. You can see them right off the coast of California. Yeah, yeah. And then blues. Blues are probably one of the most beautiful of all the sharks. They're transoceanic, they're pelagic. They're, you know, in a lot of the shark fisheries. If you eat fish and chips, you'll probably be eating blue sharks. But they're absolutely beautiful. And then this is one, Ethan, who's a student with Ocean First Institute, works a lot on these animals, tiger sharks. Tiger sharks are the garbage cans of the ocean. They eat pretty much whatever they want to. They have specialized teeth that allow them to open the carapaces of sea turtles. Unfortunately, that's one of their favorite foods. So they have a very special tooth shape. And they've been found to have wine in their bellies, cameras. We even found a suit of armor inside of a tiger shark's belly. So they are definitely indiscriminate feeders and interesting. So, and they're here, of course, they're here in Florida. Sand tigers are a really interesting story. You see them oftentimes in the aquaria because they're easy to catch, they're docile, but they look terrifying because of the teeth that are snaggling out of their mouths. Sand tigers have a fascinating reproductive story. So female sharks have they have twin uterus inside. And in the sand tiger, her babies develop in these twin uteri. And unfortunately, what they do to survive is they will eat their brothers and sisters until the last one standing is the biggest. So it's intrauterine cannibalism. Whoa. Yes, that is here. So at the end of the day, that's who is born and who is the best and most well-suited to survive.
And then they have two pups.
Two pups come out. Yep, two pups. So the strongest of all come out. Yes, it is a fascinating story to know that of the sand tiger. And did you know that we have sharks that walk on land? So there really are land sharks. So appellate sharks live in Australia. They're walking sharks, and they literally use their pectoral fins to do an action called punting, where they walk on the reef during low tide. And they do that so that they can walk over to little areas where fish are trapped to just easily make a meal. So this is a appellate shark just walking along, and they can stay out of the water upwards of almost an hour without any permanent damage. So they are what's called anoxia tolerant. So they can stay out for quite some time. Ooh, this is not a pretty one. Okay, so this is the cookie cutter shark. It gets the name because of what it does. So the cookie cutter, this one is pickled. So this is one that's been preserved for science. That's why it's especially ugly. But cookie cutters have a very special thing that they do. So you can see the bottom teeth are very long and sharp, and the top are very small. Take a look at this. This is the signature mark of a cookie cutter. They will go onto something and then spin and then take out a cookie cutter bite. Okay, this is the ugliest of the sharks. This is the goblin shark. Goblin sharks live in the deep ocean, and they have this very long snout. And you can see that they've got large teeth, which are very dagger-like. And it's not any better looking from the front, unfortunately. And that snout, again, has it's filled with sensory systems that really allow that shark to find what it's looking for. And here it is. This is the most interesting part of it, though. It's not just the snout. This is a goblin shark's ability to throw its jaw. Yeah, so they extend out their jaw, and that allows them to capture any food, because they may only bump into something, once a week. And so they really want to maximize that opportunity. So the goblins are really bizarre with that jaw. And then that gets us, so you've got the goblin this way, and then you get the hammerheads with the stretches this way. So hammerheads are one of my all-time favorites. And here you can see hammerheads have this expanded head shape, and they school together. This is the scalloped hammerheads. They school together sometimes in the hundreds in mixed groups of males and females. They have dominance hierarchies. They have an intelligence. They're the smartest of the sharks. And they are actually the newest evolved sharks in the ocean. So hammerheads are the new kids on the block. And, the question really is, when you look at them, why do they have such a strange head shape? What is going on here? Well, what you might not know about hammerheads is that there is a suite of hammerhead species, and they all have different levels of expansion of their heads, which are called cephalofoils. And so it goes from modest to the bonnet head, which is abundant here. We all know the bonnet head, and all the way down to this really strange one in its own genus called Eusphyroglocki, and then kind of everything in between. And so the question is, what has the head done to their the way that they experience their world, and which one came first? So what do you guys think? Which of these do you think evolved first? The really big wing one, or the shovel head? Shovel. Right, that's what I thought. So I thought shovel, and it's going that way, but it's actually the genetics show us that this one came first, the one that is the weirdest of all, and it's sort of been trending back towards a normal head shape, which is really surprising. So here it is. This is the winged head shark. This is what it looks like, and this is, it's just insane. It looks like a swimming T. Yeah. Is what it looks like, and this one has a very limited distribution on the north of Australia. But a lot of them are found all over the world. So again, very, very different sizes and different distributions in the hammerheads. And again, this is what it looks like when you do an X-ray of them. One of the things that I love to point out is the eyeballs on the end. They have an optic nerve that goes all the way to the brain, and that optic nerve is so long. So you think about how long does it take to get that visual information going to the brain. There's a lot of things that have shifted in that head. So one of the things that I was interested in, and what I'll talk about now with research, is what do they see? What do they experience with this weird head? And so one of the things I wanted to look at was their vision. And so sharks, have traditionally been thought to have poor vision. but it really couldn't be further from the truth. Sharks have excellent vision. It rivals our vision. Their eyes have mobile pupils, just like ours do. They have the same hardware we do. And so one of the things that I was interested in looking at is their visual fields. What can they see around their heads? And so I did tests to figure that out. And I used a technique called an electroretinogram. And what I found was really interesting. I found that all sharks can see straight ahead. They have binocular overlap, so they can see as they're swimming straight ahead, which we didn't think that hammerheads would. But what was really interesting is we found that the hammerheads overlaps are much larger than the other regular sharks, which was a total surprise. This was not what we expected. And why does this matter? Well, what's interesting is they have these large overlaps, which again grant them depth perception. That's why we have evolved to have binocular vision. But we also found that they have these big, big blind spots in front of their head. So just as you put your finger like right here and you can't see, well, it goes out for a really long way on the hammerheads and the other sharks. And that's exactly where their food is. So it doesn't make any sense. And they don't have hands, so they can't grab anything. So what's going on there? It's like the most critical moment. They can't even see what they're trying to go after. And that just bugged me. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. And so what I wanted to look at is another way for them to detect what's right in their vicinity. And that really is this other sense they have, which is the electro sense. So sharks have an ancient sense. All these peppery dots on the snout of that shark are jelly-filled canals called the ampullae of Lorenzini, and they evolved to detect weak electric fields. Every living thing in the water gives off a weak electric field, and sharks evolved to detect it. There's no hiding from a shark. You can't do it. And so, yeah, good to know. And so we devised an experiment to figure out, could they detect in that, in that visual void that goes around in the front of their head? And so we devised an experiment where we basically generated the electric field of a crab or a fish, and we would try to trick the sharks to see if they would detect it and come in. And we did that by putting a little plate underwater that had a battery, and we would flip the battery switch, and the sharks would come in and go crazy and bite, just as if it was a fish or a crab. So you can see they're coming in and they're biting and biting and biting at the sand, thinking it's a fish. And that was a 6 microvolt battery. It's a tiny, tiny voltage. And that's exactly what they do. And so we were able to do experimental trials and figure out when they turned, how far away they were detecting. And that really allowed us to understand that, yes, that visual void right in front of their head is totally covered by the electrosensory system. So again, not a big surprise, because these animals have evolved for millions of years and they're pretty perfect, if you ask me. And so they really do incorporate all of those sensory systems together. And what's cool is if you drive up to the Frost Science Museum, my research is highlighted there in an exhibit, which is so exciting for me. I went and I visited it and I sat there for hours watching people go by, and I'm like, oh, it was amazing. So hammerhead, and you can stick your head into a hammerhead head and you can see what they see, which I thought was cool. Amazing. Yeah, so I went from sensory biology, though, because there was an elephant in the room that was really, really disturbing me, into more of a conservation focus. And this is a little gross, and I'm sorry, guys, I'll go through this quickly, but sharks in general are in global decline. Again, there's over 500 species, but sharks are being captured and their fins are being cut off for shark fin soup, which is one of the big drivers, other than meat, for sharks' global decline. And it's unfortunate, and it's a really wasteful practice, and it's something that I think all of us as divers and ocean lovers really makes us angry. It certainly makes me angry, and 40 to 100 million sharks per year, and that number is probably low. If you look at the landings reports, it's low. And so these are the numbers of sharks that are taken just for their fins, which again is waste. And so the International Union on the Conservation of Nature has declared now great hammerheads and scalloped hammerheads as critically endangered species. That's one step away, really, from extinction. So this is, for me, we have to have special permits to work on these animals now. And so one of the shifts that I had was I was angry and I wanted to try to do something about it. And so I was able to work with friends down in Costa Rica, which is sort of a really hopeful place. And it's a place where hammerheads congregate in this area called Golfo Dulce. And it means sweet water. It's a tropical fjord in the southernmost part of Western Costa Rica. And my friends were noticing a lot of baby hammerheads. And they were also noticing that the fishermen were using them as bait. They didn't know any better. They didn't know that these were critically endangered animals. And so my friends started tagging and tracking them to try to understand why there was a disproportionate amount of little itty bitty sharks there. Was it a place, was it a nursery? Was it a place that if you were to protect it would be a very important place? If you want to protect a species, you want to protect the babies. So I went down and I helped them do these tagging studies. We were trying to figure out if the mothers were coming in to have their pups here. So we spent time tracking them, figuring out, are they using this as a critical habitat? And so this is one of the little ones, and they zip off and they're okay. And this is the great news. After that study, we were able to have this area declared as the world's first hammerhead shark sanctuary by the Costa Rican government. So it was an exciting project that had really great outcomes. And for me, that's where I really think research should be. And we also went into the schools and talked to students about education. And it was really critical because that flipped the fishermen from using hammerheads as bait to using other sources. And so for us, that was a real victory, and one that we're modeling in other areas. All right, great. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. White sharks are kind of the poster children of the shark world. It's one that a lot of us know, and it's certainly what Shark Week is always all about. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some work that I didn't really choose to do, but it sort of found me, and it's interesting. So I'll share a little bit about white sharks. So this is probably the biggest white shark in the world that's ever been filmed. And her name is Deep Blue. And she is here in a place called Guadalupe, Mexico, which is off the Baja coast. And she could be pregnant. And white shark females, when they're pregnant, they're not only long, but they get girthy and very girthy. And when you see her swim around here, you're going to see her belly. They get huge. Wow. And they can have upwards of 5 to 7 pups at the same time inside, and the pups are as big as me and you. Gosh. So they're big. And so I was asked to come to Guadalupe to figure out how big the sharks are without touching them. That was my challenge. Okay, and you have to stay in the cage. So I thought, all right. Well, so I had students, young students, help me devise a tool that allowed us to use lasers with sharks, which I thought was pretty cool, to measure them. And so this is a technique called laser photogrammetry. And so on the sides are 2 lasers. In the middle is a GoPro camera, pretty basic PVC setup. And the lasers are a known distance apart and they're parallel. So no matter if I'm 5 feet away or 10 or 15 feet away, it's always the same distance apart. And you shine those lights onto the side of the shark as it swims by. And then you go back and you look at your footage, and it's basically putting a ruler on the side of the shark. And so it's an easy way for us to be able to get the lengths of these animals without even touching them. So non-invasive techniques are really great. And this has allowed us to understand things like age, reproductive status, and repeatability, because the same animals go back to these areas time and time again. We were able to beam from the cage live, which was one of the coolest things I've ever done. We were in the middle of absolute nowhere, and we hacked into a satellite, and we were able to beam it in all over the world. And I was talking about the sharks as they were swimming by. It was really, really neat. And again, just trying to dispel the myth that, these are not the sharks of the Jaws era. And they do weird things. So this white shark looks like it has a hairball. And they do these behaviors. This, is it territoriality? Is it there's females here? Is it you're in my space? Again, these are some of the most iconic animals in the ocean, and we still don't know some of their basic biology and their behavior. So it just shows you that we need more people studying these animals. We absolutely need more. And so I'm going to tell you now just a little bit about a study that I've been participating in for 4 years. And it was in the Northeast Atlantic, and it was a white shark study. And the idea behind it was to try to understand the life history. Yeah.
How long was she? You look like you.
Oh, I'm sorry. She was 17 feet long. She was a
17?
big girl. Maximum size for a white shark is about 22 feet. So she was a big girl, big girl. And white sharks are thought to live up to 70 years, just like us. So they can live a long time, and they don't get reproductively active until their 30s. So they have to live a long time before they can even replace themselves, which again is another reason. Yeah, why? But one of the things we were interested in with this study was to really look at the life history of the white sharks in the Northeast Atlantic, and to try to understand where do they go, why do they go, what do they do? And so this is the vessel that I went on to do this study. The organization is called OSearch. And what they do is they'll get animals on hook and line, bring them to a platform, and they are able to collect data on the animals. So many of you may have seen this before, and it sometimes can be controversial because animals are brought up on platforms. But what's interesting is that the mantra behind this organization is that they are maximizing the amount of data collected. And so there are 24 projects, 42 scientists, and over 100 sharks to try to, again, unravel this puzzle and this mystery. And so I was one of those scientists that went out to try to understand more. And so I'm going to show you just a very quick movie here and explain what you're seeing. So there's one large vessel, and then there's a small contender vessel that goes out to do hook and line fishing. And so the hook and line sets, they have about 5 of them. And as soon as they get a shark on that, they bring that back to the main vessel. Again, put it onto a platform. They put a pipe into its mouth to put water over its gills because they're ram ventilators. They need that. And then all of these different projects, all of the data is collected. So right here, I'm inserting an acoustic tag and doing a quick surgery on the shark, and then going back into the lab with the blood to look at a couple of different things, and then the animal is released back into the wild where it belongs. And so again, measurements, blood, we do ultrasounds to look at, are there babies, to look at the heartbeat, things we've never seen before. We are scraping the teeth and gums for their microbiome to look for drug discovery, things like that we've never seen before. And then again, putting on acoustic tags to determine their presence in certain regions, and then satellite tags. And that allows us to track them with satellites and get basically real-time GPS coordinates on the sharks. And again, multidisciplinary team. And my part of the study was really trying to look at how many sharks did the guys get on hook and line. And then what I wanted to do was to use this. I'm a non-invasive person. I really love not getting into the sharks world too much. And so I wanted to do what are called BRUBs. These are baited remote underwater video systems. So I put a bunch of chum, bunch of blood and guts and cameras and deployed that right next to where the fishermen were doing hook and line. And I wanted to see how many sharks were coming in, how many sharks were they missing, what was happening. And so this is what it looks like when we deploy BRUBs. We have frames, and when we bring these up, you can see the secret life of sharks. It's absolutely incredible. So they swim by, they're interested, they'll bump the camera. Sometimes they eat the camera, which gets to be expensive, but they do. And it allows us to look at sex. It allows us to look at markings of the animals. And that has been really instructive and helpful as we create these ID databases with other researchers. This is off the coast of Massachusetts. This is a juvenile, very interested in the camera and the bait. And what's also interesting is that many of the juveniles were beautiful. Their heads were clean, no scarring, really, really, really nice. But that wasn't the case when we got to some of the bigger females. So this is up in Nova Scotia, Canada. And so this is a recording of a female coming in. And what you may see are, there's a lot of chunks missing in her body. It is a rough life to be a female shark because the males get rough. And when they get rough, when it comes to mating, they will grab onto the side of the female's head because they don't have hands again. And so they do really get beat up. And so these females, not only are they beat up by males, but they're beat up by seals because that's what they're eating, and the seals fight back. So we saw a lot of these animals with really big scars all over their heads. And then she started attacking the camera and it just went from there. But luckily I got this one back, which was good. But I wasn't always so lucky. This is our friendly tiger shark, the one that eat everything. And so I lost at least 4 cameras from tiger sharks. And when I would bring these back up, and I did have 1 camera survive, and this is it. But they're very curious, and you know, they really love anything they can get in their mouths.
Are they disturbed by the cameras,
Yes.
the flashers? Because when we were diving with the tigers, they said turn off your,
Yes.
if you have, yeah.
And you know why
So
is
repeat the.
yeah, so the question is, you know, that she's been diving with tiger sharks before, and the camera flashes and the camera equipment seemed to attract the sharks, and was kind of a thing. And that's absolutely true. I myself have also done experiments where I had a camera in the water and I was doing a weak electric field on the bottom, the sharks beeline right for the camera. So it's giving off an electric field, and they can detect it. So it's just like anything else. They think it might be food, so they're curious. And when they're curious, they put stuff in their mouths. And when they do that, it can be bad. Yeah, it can be bad. And then a guy that is not here tonight, but Dr. Chris Malinowski went on one of these expeditions and he filmed this. This is our friendly mako shark, the one that goes 60 miles an hour. And there's a funny little side story about this. So I got this video from Chris. It was like his 3rd day of work. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And we took it to a magazine, and they wanted to publish on it. And I was like, just please don't say anything negative about the shark, you know, please. And so the headline on this one was so funny. It was a avalanche of razor blades.
Oh,
And I was like, that wasn't what we were going for. But so as we analyze the footage again, the goal is to look at how many fishermen, you know, how successful were the fishermen versus the brubs? What were we seeing, creating those databases? And you can see here, there's all kinds of markings on these individuals that allow us to identify them. And one of the other things that was really interesting to me is you may have heard that, oh, sharks don't get cancer, they don't get diseases. People, that's another myth that you may have heard, but they do. And so out of 25 sharks that I saw in my 4-year grub expeditions for white sharks, there was one that had this huge tumor on its head, on the lower jaw. And I think, but the body of the shark is quite slim. And so I think it probably was impacting them. One of the last things that I'll talk about with white sharks is that we also collect water to find their DNA. And so that's another non-invasive way for us to track where these animals go. And so we collected water at all of our sites, and we basically take that back to the lab, and then we can identify whether we have white sharks or not. And we did that, and we detected 12 sharks, which is really exciting. We detected 25 on the brubs, and we detected 12 on the eDNA, which was really exciting. And then just lastly here, these are the satellite tags that we put on the animal's dorsal fins. And when the dorsal fin breaks the surface, you can track them. And what's really exciting to me is the culmination of all of this is that we found the sharks move from Canada all the way to Louisiana and back in a season.
wow.
We didn't know that before. That's a long distance. We also think that they feed heavily in Canada on seals. They give birth in New York to their babies. So there's baby white shark nursery off New York City. We think that they mate in the Carolinas. North and South Carolina is the mating region. And then they come to Florida to be snowbirds, just like this. Good for you. So again, really great for us to start to really unravel the puzzle of the white shark.
How long do those satellite tags stay on them?
It depends on how much money you have. Some of these, and I'll talk about one here, but you can get tags that will last upwards of 6-7 years. Some of them can pop off at a predetermined time and allow you to have a more comprehensive data set. So it really depends on your question. It depends on what you're trying to answer. And so for us, we just recently went down to South Africa because orcas are wreaking havoc on white sharks in an area where they have been abundant over the history over the last, I don't know, maybe 30 years. And we have noticed that the orcas come in and they kill the white sharks. They have learned to flip them over and put them into a state, a trance-like state, and they eat their livers, ripping them out. And you might say, why would they do that? Because it's like a Twinkie. It's just wonderful. And orcas love that. And orcas are incredibly smart. And so they have taught this pod how to kill white sharks. And so the white sharks in this vicinity have fled. And so an area that once had abundant cage diving opportunities and tourism no longer has that. And so we went to this area to tag with pop-off satellite tags a white shark. And so you'll see this is Dr. Chris Malinowski, and he's about to jab the shark. It looks a little a little scary, but he got that tag on there and we're all screaming and we lost our minds. We're so happy. And that tag follows that shark and is able to allow us to understand where it's going. So again, real-time GPS, and what a beautiful opportunity that was for us to do that work. And then the best part, I lost my mind, is that this is the grub that we deployed under the boat while we were tagging the shark. And right after that, the shark with the tag swam by. So you can see the tag on the back. We couldn't believe it. It was great. So it was just proof that our tag was on and that she was okay. And we called her Toothpick. She was little. Yeah, so that was beautiful. And there was so many sharks in South Africa, all kinds of species. It was great. And then here we are. So now one of the great things that I'll end on here is that I feel like I've come full circle. And 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to come back to the Florida Keys and to be with friends down here at Marine Lab and to start a research lab here. And it's been the honor of my life to be able to come back here to where I started and to where my heart is, and to be able to bring people together to really try to understand sharks and to try to save them. And so Ethan is here tonight. Ethan is our founding Marine Lab student extraordinaire, and he loves sharks absolutely as much as I do. And he has been asking questions for his master's thesis now at FAU, and he's out there all the time trying to figure out what's going on with the sharks in the area. And so he does amazing brubs. And so this is one of Ethan's brubs that he deployed. And this is a hammerhead that's coming in and investigating the bait. And he sent this to me and we both couldn't believe it. We're so excited. So Ethan is really looking at the abundance and the seasonality of sharks in the Upper Keys to try to understand who's here and when. But not only does he have his eyes under the sea, he actually flies drones overhead, so that, whoops, I'm so sorry. I hope I can get your drone footage to work. Oh goodness, please. Oh, I don't think I can. Oh, I'm so sorry, Ethan, don't kill me. See, I need Ethan to be my tech guy. But he does these amazing drone flights. We just did one today. We caught 2 sharks today. Absolutely incredible. And so Ethan has brought his drone power to being an eye in the sky, and again, to look at the abundance of the sharks, who's here, when, and what are they doing and how can we protect them. And then one of the other things that we do, this is a tiger shark that we caught on our boat. We draw blood from all of our sharks. And what do we do with the blood? Well, we look at their health. So when you go to the doctor and you get a CBC, you get all of the things done on your blood to find out how you're doing. But we also look at the presence of pharmaceuticals. And so as you and I take drugs and urinate out into the environment, the water plants don't always filter that out. And so we're finding heart attack medicine, we're finding antidepressants, we're finding a whole suite of drugs in sharks. And that's alarming because we don't know what that does to them. And ultimately, we may be consuming some of these fish in our environment, and we don't know what that does to us. So we're trying to understand it. And we're also trying to figure out ways to do better when it comes to our waste. And then lastly, this is a very loved animal here in the Florida Keys. And Dr. Chris Malinowski is our director of research. This is his passion. He loves the life grouper, and he is one of the guys that goes to all the FWC meetings and fights. And he fights with the data, and he also fights with his heart to try to help these animals survive. And as you know, recently there was an opening so that people could take a life grouper, and that was against scientific recommendations. We did not recommend that people are able to take a life grouper. They haven't recovered yet. So I just wanted to share that because that is our local project. So I'm going to end now and just say, you know, get involved. We're here. We have our lab at Marine Lab right up the street. We love people to come out and volunteer with us, learn about what we do. You can get your hands dirty. Ethan will let you chum. He'll let you cut up bait. I've seen it.
I demand.
There's high demand to cut up bait. So please, and spread the word. We're here, and we really would love to, you know, have you work with us. Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you. Take questions if anybody has any. Yes.
I have a couple of them. Going back to when you were taking the sharks out of the water and doing all the different tests, everyone as fast as possible get the shark back in the water. What's the time frame from when you get the shark out of water, get them intubated or whatever?
Yeah.
To getting him back in the water.
It depends on the shark. It's a great question. So the question, sorry, I'll repeat the question. How long does it take from when you get the shark onto the platform to when it's released? And the answer is it depends on the shark and it depends on the workup. But it can be as short as 6 minutes. It could be as long as 8 to 10 minutes. It just, again, depends on how's the blood draw going, how's the ultrasound going. And but what I can tell you is that veterinarians are there and their primary goal is shark health. And if that is compromised, it's over. And everybody steps back and that shark gets put back in the water. Nobody there is there for ego or to do anything that would harm the shark. We are there to save the shark. So if anything goes wrong, that shark goes back.
Two more questions. The senses for the sharks, you had both ocular and the electric.
Yeah.
So are they both equally as powerful, or have you noticed that, like, from a distance, a shark can sense that you're there and swim to the food source?
Great
versus
question.
visual.
Yeah, so the question is the electrosensory system and the visual system, are those the same? Is one more powerful than the other? Does one, work at greater distances than the other? So visibility, of course, depends on, the clarity of the water, so visual ability, but vision can extend as far as ours. So it could be, hundreds of feet. The electric sense is a short range sense. And when I mapped that out for the sharks that I studied, it's about 30 centimeters. So very close. This is not a long range sense. They're not going to detect things overseas. They are detecting something that is literally proximate to the head.
Okay. And then the last question, sorry. And I'll shut up. I was the last 2 days diving with Reef Environmental Education Foundation. We were doing a project under Jen, which is doing SMILE project Size Matters, and we're working with the lasers and cameras.
Oh, great.
Hoping to put those in the hands of citizen scientists eventually.
Awesome.
We're beta testing those systems. So I was really interested in your system you had set up, but I noticed today several of the species that we're filming or capturing are seem sensitive to the lasers.
Oh yeah.
The hogfish particularly, but like
Yes.
like it was. I don't think it was hurting them, but other species you could get just fine. They'd be like modeling, like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But so did you notice the sharks having any sensitivity to the laser and green lasers versus red lasers too? We're noticing a difference.
Yeah. So the question is, do the sharks have a noticeable reaction to the lasers? And is there a disproportionate one between red and green lasers? I've never used red lasers, so I don't know the answer to that. But green lasers, I can tell you some sharks freak out.
Yeah.
The minute it touches their skin, they freak out and they know it, they feel it, they sense it, and they respond. So I measured gray reef sharks in Palau. Ooh, that was scary because they responded they arched their backs, they got upset, they didn't posturate, they skittered. So definitely yes, and then others nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
And same with fish, same response. And some you can put that laser on the sand and suddenly you have it's like a cat laser.
oh yeah, they think they're eating little fish.
Absolutely.
We weren't measuring.
It's
we're going
hilarious.
after it like it was food. quite funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
What's the rarest shark you've gotten to dive with personally so far to date? And then what would be your unicorn you're still hoping to dive with?
Oh, that's a great question. So what's the rarest shark I've swam with and what's my unicorn or dream shark? I would say probably scalloped hammerheads. They're critically endangered. And I led a trip and got to see that animal and I was crying in my mask. And so were a lot of the people that I was with. So that was it. My unicorn, that's a great question. I don't even know. Maybe goblin shark? Luckily, let's say luckily. Thank you. That's a great question.
Fishermen, especially in the Florida Keys, have been complaining that the amount of sharks taking their catch has been increasing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's true? And if so, is it a change in behavior or is it a change in number of sharks? Fortunately, I think it's being used to show that sharks are increasing and no longer need protection. Do you have
Yes.
a reaction?
So the question is, sharks are taking fish off lines increasingly, and fishermen are voicing that they feel that there are an overabundance of sharks and perhaps even calling for a killing of sharks. And so the short answer is, I do think there are more sharks than there were before, and the data is supporting that. And so what happened in the 1980s is we had a large reduction in sharks. Sharks tanked in the 1980s. And after that time, the highly migratory species really started to do protections for sharks. And that was the program that was established. And it took a long time for shark stocks for certain species to rebound. And we're seeing those positive, management decisions now. So there are more sharks. That's absolutely true, especially black tips. However, what we're saying when we say there's more sharks than there were when there was a very low number. It's called a shifting baseline. That's absolutely true. And so my take on it is that I think as fishermen, scientists, and the public, we have to have discourse that's true. And I think we have to find common ground because you certainly can't tell people that they're wrong. I think we have to really find a way to talk about it. But depredation is what that's called. And, I'll just leave you with this. Depredation was happening to Hemingway. And he talked a lot about that. And it was because they couldn't reel him in fast enough because the gear they had wasn't really fast. So this is not a new issue, but it's an issue that I think really sparks division amongst people. And so I think it's our opportunity today to go in and really have a discussion about this and find some common ground, some solutions that don't include, killing animals for fun.
You said the same thing about Goliath group.
Yes, yeah,
Same argument. Yeah.
yes. Same argument for Goliath grouper. I think we have one question in the back, yeah.
Yes, you mentioned that some of the sharks are long-lived, even older than I am.
Birthday, by the way.
What do you measure?
So vertebrae. So a lot of studies will take the vertebrae from the sharks, their vertebral column, and what they'll be able to do is look at those, and they're very similar to trees. Trees leave annual rings. So vertebral columns will also have that for sharks, and that's one way that they can also look at the age growth of sharks is on their columns. There's also radio dating. So that's what they did with the Greenland shark, and they found a signature in that shark that correlated to when the Bikini nuclear bomb was deployed. And so it's really interesting that they were able to look at all of that through that shark's history. And again, 400 years is a long time.
On a living shark.
On a living shark.
That without damage to it.
Yeah.
So I got 3 questions, but I'll make it real quick.
Sure.
So the sharks that you've seen with timber.
Yeah.
Have you, 1, done any research on those sharks? 2, are you seeing an increase in the amount of tumors in sharks? And then 3, have you tagged any of those to follow them to see how that disease process has
Progressed, yeah.
progressed?
Yeah, so the question, I'm gonna wrap it up. Okay, so the question, sorry. So the question is, the shark that had the tumor on its lower jaw, have we tracked it? Do we know anything more about it? Can we follow it? Do we know what that means? And the answer is we don't know. I have not tagged that animal that was on the brush, so that was not a tagged animal. We've seen it in Australia as well. So another researcher in Australia has seen it as well on several white sharks in the Australia population. What does it mean? We think it's a tumor, and we think that, it could interfere in feeding, but we're not really sure. We know that sharks do get these diseases. It was thought that before that they didn't get cancers, and that was really a big myth that a researcher at Mote Marine Lab studied for a long time. And he's really one of the only people that has looked at this.
Right, so have you seen an increase in?
We just don't know enough. I can't say, I saw 1 out of 25. And the Australian researcher has seen several in the small population of Australian sharks. So I don't know, but I suspect, when I was talking about pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of things in the water and I don't know what that means. And we really don't know. We're just scratching the surface because we don't even know what it means to us, let alone what it means to animals swimming in it where they don't even have a chance.
Have you biopsied it? Has anyone biopsied it? You've had one?
We haven't found a dead one with that I know of. So yeah, I don't know.
Would you if you got?
Oh, heck yeah.
My question is, are you sure it's cancer or?
We don't know.
Injury induced by maybe it was caught by, a hook and it's like a growth.
Yeah, we don't know. Again, we don't have, so the question is, do we know it's cancerous? We don't know. We know that sharks get goiters. So that's a thyroid related expansion in that region, but I don't think that's a goiter. I think that is definitely some kind of tumorous growth. But again, we just don't know.
It's always on the lower jaw.
It's on the lower jaw that we've seen.
We have a few on Zoom.
Okay, so Amy, I think your question was answered. She had the same question that Bob did about shark populations in the Keys. Laura asks, what is the Shark Institute in Fort Lauderdale? I think you mentioned that and she just wants to know what its name was.
Did I say Shark Institute in Fort Lauderdale?
Oh, they might mean the Frost Museum.
Oh, yeah, that's in Miami. Yeah, that's the public museum in Miami. Go visit. They're amazing. So cool. They have a hammerhead there, as a matter of fact.
And Joshua asks, why are orcas in the same place as sharks? Is climate change a factor in where they go?
I don't think that's the reason. I think that we're just seeing a learned behavior, and I think that orcas are incredibly smart. And I think you may have heard about boats being wrecked in the Mediterranean by orca, wreaking havoc. So I don't know the answer, but I do know that the white shark's response to that killing, and it's been multiple sharks that have been killed by the orca. We've observed it with drones now, so we know it's not. It really is true. They're moving out, and so I don't know. I don't think that's related to climate. Orcas are in that area. It's cold water. It's actually the merging of two currents right at the Horn of Africa. So I don't know that that's the reason.
Was that a pod of?
And
orcas that?
Yes, and it's two orca, port and starboard are their names. They literally have names. And they are the ones that have taught the rest of the pod to do this. And so orcas are incredibly smart, and they eat different things in different regions, and they are all taught by the matriarch, and she is the leader of what she likes to eat. That's what they eat. So now we have white shark eaters in South Africa, and she just happens to like them.
I think we have another question, and Mikki will be around a little bit afterwards.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I was curious, what you would tell the young scared girl now with everything you know about. Someone your age now that might be trepidatious about going swimming, what you would, good advice you would give them to be wary of or what?
Thank you. So the question is, what would I tell my young self or a young person about sharks that may be scared? And I can tell you that the greatest part of my job is that I get to do a lot of outreach, and I also get to take young people with me on expeditions and to take kids with me underwater to dive with sharks and to measure them with lasers and have them come up to the top of the water and hoot and holler and scream and yell that they're so excited. They go on airplanes and tell the stewardesses what they did. They're so proud and excited, and they end up wanting to be the ones that stand up for sharks. To me, that's what I would have told myself, is that it's worth it. These are magical, amazing animals, and lean into nature, and nature is wonderful. And I think that's really what I that's my wish, is that more people would really get into the natural world and value these amazing animals, because they are, go visit them, go see them, jump into the water. We're in the Florida Keys, for goodness sake. So thank you, that's a wonderful question. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
So we appreciate you coming in, and we actually gift you a annual membership, so you can come back 362 days. No, because we're closed 3 days. But we really appreciate your time. Sharks are, everybody loves hearing about sharks and seeing so many of the different ones. We really appreciate, we appreciate what you do and what Ocean First does. Sharky is on our board. He works for Ocean First. We're glad that Ethan was here, and we appreciate you coming in from Colorado.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
So if anybody gets